On May 14th, John Wick's Play Dirty series returned with the question asking us if Game Masters could cheat to win, if cheating itself could be turned into a rule. The question that was posed to us was, how would we apply this rule in our games? And right off the bat, I'm going to break the rule. I'm going to cheat because I don't accept the question. I don't accept the position that dice can wreck your game. If we have decided to use dice to resolve an action, and we all know that dice are arbitrary, that if there's any possible result that we're not willing to accept, then we shouldn't have been rolling. Quite simply, in that situation, the players in Game Master need to learn to frame their roles better, or they need to move on to a game that isn't built around the idea of random generation of results. Going through the motions of taking out the dice, rolling them, and then after you get the result saying, wow, that completely screws up what I had planned, it puts your plans ahead of any kind of random outcome, and it shows that you're not really interested in playing that aspect of the game. You're more interested in telling a story. And if that's what you and your players want, then what's keeping you from doing that? No, I feel that when dice are involved, that we need to be aware what we're rolling for, and I think we need to be less invested in completing plans about story outcomes. The dice are there so that we can be surprised. They give us a story that we couldn't have created on our own. The collaboration between the group and the Game Master already is producing stories that are greater than the sum of their individual parts. But adding in the dice, taking away that emotional tie to outcomes and allowing for the story to develop because of this mechanic brings us to positions that we wouldn't normally have chosen and allows us to discover things in play that we never would on our own. And that has its own value, if that's the way you choose to play. Being cognizant of the need to frame roles is something which can be overlooked. We become adept at employing the system. We become better at describing the scene. We learn how to handle the great influx of information, but we don't always learn how to set up the conditions of a role properly so that we're focused on the attempt and not the outcome. When we focus on the outcome, we're guilty of premature imagination. We envision the outcome before it's assured. Now, if we're just storytelling, if we're creating a story around the table as a group of friends, there's no problem here. There is no break in the logical sequence. But when we are playing a role-playing game, and when we do accept the value and the input of the randomizing mechanic, then to jump directly to the outcome forces us into an adversarial relationship with the dice, which aren't going to just reward you with your chosen outcome. They're going to give you a range of outcomes, one of which may be yours. So, if you kick down the door instead of trying to kick down the door, you may discover that the dice say, no you don't. And not being able to get through that door wrecks your story. But if you know how to rely on the dice, if you know how to frame the role in the first place, then the character's attempting to kick down the door. And the player and the character understand they might not be able to get through that door, and something else has to happen. The story goes off in a different direction. And you may be surprised. In fact, I feel you'll often be surprised
at just how rewarding stories can be when we give up this kind of control.
So, I'm sorry, I don't accept the question. So, as always, the decision lies with you. Use dice. Don't use dice. But whichever resolution mechanic your group decides to use it in the way that maximizes its potential. The dice are there to bring you outcomes that you wouldn't necessarily choose for yourself and enable you to explore those stories and find in them surprises.